Good afternoon, y'all. It's Sila the Poet again. This is International Women's Day Thoughts, Part 2. So, I was discussing a whole bunch of statistics before and discussing some of the reasons why I became a feminist. So now I'm going to continue that discussion. This is Part 2. I don't know if anybody has ever heard the term coverture. Coverture is an English law term or English common law doctrine where a woman's legal identity was subsumed by her husband upon marriage, meaning that a woman became property. Okay? Now, I'm going to discuss what do you call that? I'm going to discuss more of the reasons why I champion feminism. Okay? But coverture was practiced here in the US and in the UK. Okay? Women only stopped being considered the legal property of their husbands during the 19th century. Okay? Through the Married Women Property Acts. It started off in Mississippi in 1848. Mississippi 1839 and New York in 1848. 1882, it began to stop in the UK. Okay? Now, the Married Women Property Acts allowed women to own, inherit, and manage property independently, separating their assets from their husband's control. Okay? It is in 1920 that the women's suffrage and the 19th Amendment allowed women the right to vote here in the US. And this had to be achieved by protest, hunger strikes, and constant speaking out. Okay? In 1974, there was the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which allowed women to apply for credit cards, their own bank accounts, and to file for loans without a male cosigner. Okay? 1974. Let that sink in. Okay? The first federal anti-discrimination law, okay, again, which was for women in the U.S. workplace, was the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which focused on eliminating pay disparities between men and women performing the same jobs. Okay? Later on, the Civil Rights Act prohibited discrimination based on race, religion, color, and national origin. Title VIII in 1964 broadened protections for discrimination. Okay? So marital rape, that was only outlawed in 1993 in the US. Okay? That's when it became a crime nationwide. Okay? Before the 1970s, marital rape was legal in the US. And it was only outlawed in Michigan and Delaware in 1974. Okay? Please let that sink in. The age of consent for sex remains in place for girls at the age of 16 years of age. However, different states have different consent laws. In some states it may be 17, and others it may be 18. Okay? Now, I've just did a lot of research, and I've had to think about how women had to fight for these basic rights. The right to vote, the right to hold political office, the right to not be raped by their husbands, okay? The right to be able to be married at an age where they're not being sexually abused. All of these things, led to my decision to become a feminist, okay? In Japan, 2 200,000 girls and young women were kidnapped and forced into military sex slavery by the Imperial Japanese Army in World War II. Okay? Women from different places, supposedly South Korea, Philippines, different places in Asia. These women ended up being called comfort women, and they were forced into it, and a lot of these women were gang raped, okay, essayed, sexually assaulted, and mistreated. And I believe that the government still hasn't apologized or acknowledged these women and what they have gone through. Okay? So it's things like that where you have women not being treated the way that they should be treated. Women that, they have to fight for their own safety, their own bodies, their own everything, man. It's just crazy. Okay? So, wife beating became illegal in the late 1800s. Okay? With it 1871 Alabama leading the way, and then in Maryland in 1882. That's when it became illegal. But it was still widely practiced all over the U.S. until the 1970s women's movement began fighting and lobbying and pushing for the legal system to start treating it more seriously as if it were a crime. And this ended up leading to federal action, okay? VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, okay, which criminalized domestic violence and, women's assault and all of these different things. Okay, let's talk about some of the first that women have done. Uma Lowali was Niger's first female pilot. And do you know what year that she was allowed to become a pilot and accomplish that? 2015. Okay? Anousheh Ansari was the first female space tourist. And the year that she accomplished that was 2006. Irene Koko Mutungi was the first African American woman to captain a commercial aircraft, a Boeing 1737. And that didn't happen until 2004. Ketanji Brown Jackson was the first Black woman to serve as a Supreme Court justice. And that did not happen until 2022. Okay? Oprah Winfrey was the first Black woman to own and produce a talk show. Vanessa Williams was the first Black Miss America. Helen A. Hayes was the first EGO winner. The first female presidential nominees was Victoria Woodhull and Hillary Clinton. Okay? And Kamala Harris was the first female vice president. So these women, have done some amazing firsts, some amazing accomplishments. But as you can see, a lot of these accomplishments did not occur until recently, okay? Without Victoria Woodhull, because that was further back. But all the other people, all of these accomplishments were fairly recent. And that lets me know that even though, we are championing feminist causes and we are fighting for women's rights, progress is slow. And some of, the fighting and the hard work and the activism from years before is just coming to fruition now. So I say to all the ladies, please don't forget to stay informed. Please champion causes, feminist causes. Please, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves, go to a protest and do the work, please do so. You know, we can always use more numbers in the sisterhood to do the work because, like I said, improvements are coming. Improvements are coming. And even though there are still a lot of injustices globally, as women mobilize, as women fight, we will be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Okay? In certain parts of the world, the struggle for the right to an education still occurs. Okay? There was a girl in the Middle East. I think her name was Mahala. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Well, she was shot in the head by, a man who was against her championing for women's education or girls' education. So these things are serious. These things are serious, and that is the reason why women mobilize and they rally together to be able to have some form of a voice and some form of protection. Okay, so power to all women. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. And I hope that you have a good day. Peace.